Hello, it's Scott and Rita again. This is Cosmic Dialogue number 42. You can find us, as always, at cosmicfixer.com. We have a YouTube channel. We have a free Facebook group that you can learn all about us too. It's a fun course intro. Enough marketing, but also Rita does these awesome circles. So I'm now an ambassador for the circles. I have become their servant. More on that to come. But this is just our Cosmic Dialogue 42. And what are we talking about, Rita?
Well, first of all, we want to say that I and the circles love you as our ambassador. You're the best. We are going to have a theme of change me first. And we have not thought about it prior to this. We're just going to see what comes out. But we feel it's a very important it's more than a topic. It's a way of life, really, that we feel is extremely important to step into as a priority of every situation. Okay, change me first. If I want this to change me first. So that's how I see it.
All right. Well, I will get started.
Good.
So, get you off the hook right away. No, that's not that. Let's go 2 years in the future. So it's been 2 years since Rita and I had this conversation about this whole concept of change me first. This idea that part of the huge big lie that we want to get away from is this idea that the world has to change, but not me. So it was a concept that just kind of like came through when we first did our Cosmic Fixer website. And it was sort of like it sort of just creeped in when it was being designed 2 years ago. And then we started having conversations about this. And then Rita had spoken to me about what happens if we don't help anyone and we just get really good. Our lives get really happy, get really great. We change ourselves. And then that's the catalyst. What happens then? And so that was just like a radical concept of what, we have this mission-driven thing to help others. We really desperately think that we have something to share. And what does that mean? What does that mean? Well, I learned rather quickly too during this last 2 years. It doesn't mean we stop shining our light, but it does mean that we have to change ourselves first. First, along the way, I talked about how wouldn't it be great if coaching changed? The whole thing of industry of coaching about people just brushing egos and letting them chase more carrots and another thing and saying, you're wonderful, you're great, rather than companioning them. And so I thought, okay, if I want that to change, I know that I have to change me first. So I shed every mention of the word coaching, every mention of the word help off of our website. And so that shifted too. And it also helped me shift into really fully stepping into what I feel I was. And we had a Kalego on this back when we called them Kalego. When I started talking about like I wanted to step into a spiritual direction sort of space rather than coaching. And that was even before this shift 2 years ago. But I've really finally stepped into that when I was that whole concept of change me first. And how there's so much out there that's like, if we really truly believe that we're part of this cosmic collective consciousness and that we're one point of light in that whole light of consciousness, of course, if we change ourselves first, dismantle ourselves first, let ourselves collapse first, then who are we to say that that's not going to change the whole system? But it does have to happen with us first. So some of the things that changed for me over the last 2 years with this change me first thing is I realized that I needed to, that's how I became a servant for Rita's circles. It was this change me first. I wanted to really And it just came to me when my circle fell off the wall again. And I needed to change myself first and serve. And that was my definition of serving. And that was what happened with me. And I felt like, let's find a right relationship. Let's find a right situation. Let's change me. And when I really realized that after Junebug's soul circle fell off the wall, like all of them had been falling off the wall, that's what hit me. I was like, well, keep them off the wall for one thing, but it's an invitation for you to be a servant. And there are so many times in our life, I think, that we have an invitation to be a servant and to serve. And that's part of our abundance. And it's part of like us being abundant. When I realized that too, this changed me first, and it changed me. I felt this activation coming down like from my other circle. It was really interesting. But since that time of me, like that whole changed me first, it's like I've taken this attitude of total responsibility. And it has changed a lot. This idea of total responsibility means that I get to be the one to save money and be intentional if I want to move. I get to be the one who gets to show up for other people, not just for, if I get a part-time job, I find like something like, okay, I get to show up for this person that I care about, like a friend of mine who wants me to clean windows. I get to show up for them. And I've changed because it's also a service thing. So it's this equal energy. I'm not just getting. So that was me stepping into responsibility for my life. And then I knew that I didn't need to burden other people. I just needed to step into a change that was part of like responsibility and service. And I also realized that I could be a tent maker as well. Tent makers are something that Rita and I shared a little while, and I'm glad I'm doing this in this dialogue. And that it was okay. Like tent makers are like the people who'd have like a ministry or a mission or something like that to do. And they're maybe bivocational. Like I do web design. This helps me to feed my missional things that also feed me. And I can be a tent maker, and I can like actually bring in more abundance. Like a part-time job cleaning windows is part of my tent making, but I never know that whoever I encounter along that vocation might be someone that I can actually assist and serve, because I'm taking responsibility for myself and my own abundance through this tent making activity. That allows me to go and step in more fully to these things of spiritual direction, to the ideas that I can walk the astral plane or dream for someone else, or I can show up in a dream, or I can fight off demons in a dream. It's this whole idea that it's okay to be a tent maker. It's happened all the time. We're not entitled to necessarily just step into these things too. We can quit our jobs, of course, but our vocation can always be the same. So I can quit my job something, but I have a skill. I'm a web designer. I am these skills are necessary and needed, and I can be bivocational. And that was part of me stepping into responsibility, service, tent making, so that I could really show up for these missional things, like these videos, like being an ambassador for the circles, being able to tell Rita, your debt's paid in full. I'm the ambassador for the circles, and I will continue doing that. So those things shifted for me. And then total responsibility helps me shift into like, my home is better, my relationships are better. I'm not putting stress on other people or myself. My story isn't important to them. I show up to listen. I show up to walk with them. I show up to be in those silent spaces. I don't have to like help someone chase a carrot anymore. So.
Well, there's a lot in the total responsibility, and what I've seen happen with you in just really owning that and stepping into it is it's not a, I don't know, I think people feel like it's a punitive place to take total responsibility. But you have found the joys of it, and I've watched you find that when you are completely happy to be totally responsible, you get signs and evidence all over the place that may not have shown up before, or it may have shown up, but you wouldn't have noticed it because you weren't being totally responsible for your own choices, being, awareness, growth. That's what the real responsibility is being responsible for your soul's place in the entire universe, not just here today in your job or your family or your greater life. It's more of a soul position, and you have just been able to feel really more certain because of this total responsibility, and we've been doing this together, and just our certainty and our security has just grown and grown and grown because we're both stepping into that total responsibility. And what it unburdens us from, as well as us not burdening anyone else, it unburdens us and any person who steps into total responsibility. It unburdens the individual. It unburdens me from being responsible for other people's outcomes. Still opening completely that path to serving them and being a force of good for everyone that I come in contact with and that you come in contact with, but not being responsible for what they choose to do with what you're offering. And that was a real subtle way of owning a bigger truth. And that's been really fun to watch and be part of.
So what's happened with you in the last?
Yeah, well, doing that, that's just like an entire Pandora's box of shifts that happen when you step into responsibility. It's like a new level, a new sphere that you exist in, and it's almost it's less crowded. It's way less crowded in that sphere. It's easier, it's more fun, it's simpler, it's challenging, but the understandings of those challenges come more rapidly. And I've always just had this huge desire to understand things, and that's half of why I paint and draw, is just that intense observation helps me understand the thing that I'm looking at. And so it's gotten to a whole new level with this new understanding of responsibility. And the freeing, it's so freeing. I think that's the part that most people really don't understand, or the world doesn't teach us, that responsibility is freeing. It's not a burden. And the misrepresentation of responsibility is what is what we're normally taught. And so this goes back to the theme of change me first. When that's the priority, that is essentially the gateway into full responsibility. And when you're focused on change, when I'm focused on changing me, it takes the burden off of everyone else, and they feel it, whether I say anything about it or not. They feel it, and they feel a relief and an ease to go ahead and change. And I watched it again, that this is how it really works. This is like a key that people are longing for, but continuously rejecting. And it's so weird to watch that now, that wanting it so much, but continuously saying no to it. And that's something we're getting comfortable with, that discomfort of watching people reject the very thing they actually are longing for. How's that been for you?
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. One of the things that I earlier on and also throughout too is that this stepping into change me first is, you've actually shown this in the last few years, of this silence of when you can be silent. It actually is the part of like, change me first. Let's when you think someone needs to be quiet, that's okay. It's time for me to be quiet. It's time for me to silence myself. It's time for me to go in the center. So that's something you've always been very good at, and you've just gotten better at. Even like calling me on some of my things, you would just, when I have chatter and you can recognize it, all it takes for you to say, I'm going to give you a few words and I want you to sit with it, and I'm not going to explain it. And so that's happened continually. And so it's great, because there's a modeling of change me first of this too. And we don't have to like brush up against stories. We don't have to brush up against old stories anymore. It's we change ourselves first. This change me first can be a modeling for someone else to actually shift if they pay attention, if they actually see that. And there's so much more to that silence that can actually hit you, and it's hit me with you doing this too, that hits you harder, and it's more direct, and it actually shows them very quickly how, whoa, that's true. She's just getting really centered, and I've stirred up a whole story. And so it's like this modeling. You bring people back to a center when you yourself are brought back to a center. Or when you yourself go back to your practice. And that could be anything in your life that you're passionate about. You just bring yourself back to it. And in your silence, you're shedding a light on those things. So,
well, newsflash, the universe and God don't care one bit about your story. Not at all. Not listening, doesn't matter. Go ahead, chatter on, but there's no audience.
That just pops the balloon. So and it's your welcome moment. So that is Rita from the back court hitting you the lob over your head. She does it so well. So it's, yeah, and it's true. It's like this image it isn't your story. It isn't the earthly story of you. Your soul is not the earthly story of you. Who you are cosmically is not the old story of you. So, and really, like, I could tell you exactly everything I do and share my story as an example. And thank you to Vivian, who shared this long ago. But it doesn't matter. You are the one in your life that guides a boat. Is your boat to guide. And my story might be helpful, it might not be, but it has nothing to do with your story. It has nothing to do with your experience. My story can't help you take responsibility and change you first. You have to do that. So, and really all our stories do is keep us from, a lot of times our stories keep us from taking that change me first position.
Definitely. Yeah.
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 We all just need to be quiet, be silent. Um,
Try feeling. Try feeling stuff.
Turning inward. It's the and my wise friend years ago, who I've cleaned windows for, told me the longest journey. Do you know what the longest journey a man will ever take? And he said this, just at this karaoke bar. He said the longest journey any man will ever take, or any woman, is from here to here.
Yeah, definitely.
From your head to your heart. It's your
Right.
journey. My story has nothing to do with it.
Yeah. Well, it's way shorter when you just shut up.
But it's fun to. It's also good to walk with people.
Yeah, definitely.
Walk beside them.
Mm-hmm. But listening to their story doesn't serve them.
No.
That's what we're really getting very easy about, kindly closing that down, because it's not loving to let it just keep getting deeper and deeper ingrained.
There's definitely an art that we've learned over the last few years in companioning a journey,
Mm-hmm.
not staying in a story. So there's quite a difference. There's a companioning in your journey, and it's a walking beside, it's a companioning, it is a deep listening together, it is a questioning, it is a where do you find spirit, soul, God, where do you hear that voice? And let's companion that. So it's much
But there
different.
has to be movement in
Right.
order to even do that.
Yeah. And that's much different than telling someone that good for you for ending that relationship and you're such a positive person because you ended that, and I agree with your story, and then validating your story.
Mm.
Um,
Right.
People want that. Maybe they need that first, a validation first so they can take a step. But oh my gosh, there's a world between here and here.
Mm-hmm.
The whole world.
Yeah. I think that's good.
All right. Thank you, Rita.
Thank you.
Next time.